were a representative right now, would you vote to raise the nation's debt limit? Your answer, your reply.
1 minute or a minute?
1 minute.
Look, at the end of the day, we do not have a problem with our debt, and we don't have a problem with taxes. We have a spending problem, and we've known that for years. We keep spending more money, and then we keep coming back later and saying, how are we going to pay for it? We need more debt, we need more taxes, we need whatever else it is. We can't spend our way out of our problems. We have a $3.9 trillion federal budget, which is crushing working people, and I'm not prepared to crush working people anymore, any further, just to perpetuate the growth in the bureaucracy. That's not what
with respect, my question is, if you're faced with the vote, and you would be if you're sitting there, would you vote to raise the debt limit or risk, as critics say, if it's not raised, what may happen with the nation's credit rating and everything else if it's not raised? Yes or no, first of all, would you vote to raise the nation's debt limit?
I don't accept the premise of the question because I'll tell you why. I'll answer it directly. If I was in Congress for the last 2 years, I'd be battling and I'd be waging a war to make sure we didn't get to the point that we needed to do this in the first place. We can be working and we can be advocating and we can be proactive to make sure that we don't get to the 0 hour in the first place, and that's what moves us forward.
We are at the 0 hour, though, and it's not a hypothetical. The vote, it's in the headlines. It's the kind of tough decision the Tea Party will expect from people, one way or the other. Would you vote to raise the nation's debt limit or risk the nation's credit rating by not doing so? That is the vote that they will have to make, yes or no. Would you, sitting in the House right now, vote to raise the nation's debt limit?
I am not prepared to raise the debt limit, and I'm not prepared to raise taxes, but I reject the premise that that's the only option available to us. I'd be fighting for it in advance, and that's what we need leadership in Congress to do.
And I will answer your question, but I will agree. To me, we are governing by crisis, and this is just another crisis that's coming. I would vote to not raise the debt limit, but to me, we need to sit down at the table, as families do, on their budgets and say, what can we cut so we do not keep having crisis after crisis so we get to this point.
And if not raising the debt limit, as critics argue, further hampers this nation's credit rating, therefore raising interest rates for the things that people in this room buy every day, you'd still make that vote?
I would still make that vote. When are we going to stop spending money, and when are we going to stop giving us an excuse that we can keep spending money? We've got to stop.
Well, as a financial advisor for the last 21 years who's dealt with money, I would never vote again to raise any debt limit. We keep doing that time after time after time. When this president leaves office, there will be a $20 trillion debt for the American people to pay. And I can assure you this right now, and you remember this, whether I'm with you or not in 10 years. If our debt gets to $24 trillion, this nation is done. We cannot afford it. Just think if interest rates were 4 to 5%. We cannot pay the interest on our debt. Our credit rating is going to suffer anyway. We need to stop being a global economy and tending to everything that the United Nations wants us to do and fix our own house, including controlling our expenses. One thing we can do right away is everyone that retires in the federal government for the next 3 years, don't replace them. Don't hire anyone new. It frees our expenses.
Right. Well, the premise is that we're there.
And we
So if we're there, and we shouldn't be there, that's what these guys are saying. But if we are there, we Republicans have to act responsibly. We cannot, it's a no-brainer to me, you cannot vote no on that. You have to say, let's raise the debt limit. It's a national security issue. Just like we Republicans cannot act irresponsibly and say, let's shut down the government.
Yes.
That's like saying, we're having a game here, I'm going to take my ball and go home because, you're not, treating me the way. So that's the way I feel about it. But, we don't want to be there. We all don't want to be there. We want to have sound policy so we don't be there, so we don't get there.
We do have a debt problem. It's $18 trillion, the size of our gross national product. 5 or 6 weeks ago, when the Chinese lowered the yuan, our markets went into free fall. They're buying our debt. When they started selling long bonds, our interest rates did go up. A few days ago, the president said this. He said, you got to raise the debt ceiling, and I'm not going to do any more short-term resolutions. That's not the spirit of American politics. The spirit is that we find things we want in order to vote a certain way, and they find things that they don't want.
We bring in 3.5 trillion a year. We can certainly fund our debt maturities for a while. And therefore, without any compromise on the part of the president, I would vote no.
And what would you say as the financial person when these people come to you in 6 months and say my interest rates are starting to climb because credit ratings are down and the U.S. standing in the world is declined financially speaking? What do you say to people in this audience who feel it in their pocketbooks? Very briefly, very briefly.
As you know, S&P has lowered our credit rating from a AAA to a lower than that. And I would say simply this: go talk to the president and talk to those people that would filibuster any rational budget in the Senate, and let's put the blame where it belongs. Politicians in both parties, but right now the Democrats, that choose not to address a very serious long-term problem.
Right.
I would start off by saying absolutely I would not raise the debt limit, and the reason for that is this. I've been a part of our federal agencies, numerous federal agencies, to include the U.S. Army, and across the U.S. Army and every federal agency, what you see is waste and contempt for the way that we spend our dollars. Every single year at the end of the fiscal year for the federal government, agencies say, okay, we have this many dollars left sitting in the bank, let's find the most expedient possible way to spend every single dollar that we have left sitting in our account. And that is why we have a problem right now with our debt. That is why we can't afford to pay the bills. That is why we're facing this question of will we possibly have to face higher interest rates. And one of the points that was made here is this. You know what? We may face higher interest rates, but we may also face higher interest rates because we're accruing more and more and more debt. And that doesn't look good on anybody's rating either.
One thing that I didn't hear specifically from any of you, one of the House leaders said, Republicans said, and I didn't hear this nuance in any of the answers, for the debt ceiling increase to get a sizable number of Republican votes, it will require spending reductions. Why not a more nuanced approach? I didn't really hear anybody touch on that.
I like to think I did touch on that. Spending reductions are absolutely a part of it. Because
So if you not, would you vote for the debt limit increase?
I would not vote for the debt limit increase regardless, but there has to be spending
Are moderate
reductions.
Republicans wrong in the House to vote for the debt limit increase if they get spending? No, not from the audience.
You need to reduce the spending. The spending that I just spoke of is wasteful spending. I just read an article 2 days ago about the Department of Veterans Affairs that spent $3.5 million right before the end of the fiscal year buying furniture just so they could spend $3.5 million.
Let's go back down to